we've talked about using the renminbi as a trade currency. We've talked about using the renminbi as an investment currency. Now we want to go on and talk about issuing in renminbi. And I'm here with Russell Schofield-Beezer, who's the European Head of Corporate Debt Capital Markets for HSBC. So Russell, what would be the argument for issuing in renminbi?
Well, if you look at the development of the renminbi as an international currency, really the first step, as we've seen, the internationalisation of trade. So European importers who are sending and selling their goods in China have started to invoice in renminbi because that gets them the benefit of potential reduction in their costs. It allows them to hold a currency that could potentially appreciate. So as they take that renminbi offshore, if they sell that in the derivatives or the spot markets, then that's building up a deposit base in offshore markets. Combined with the growth of the deposit base from retail investors, now that's looking for a home. If there's a restriction or a limited supply of investment products, those very same corporates could go to those markets and issue in renminbi, and because there's a limited supply, the yield that they would have to pay is often lower than the yield that they would pay for onshore funding. So there's a potential price benefit for issuing in renminbi, but also it diversifies your investor base, it gives you a presence in the market, and it also signals your intention that China is an important market to you and is a growing market.
So who would be the investors in these bonds when they're being issued?
Well, traditionally, if we look even back only 2 years, the amount of offshore deposits in renminbi was only in the region of about 50 billion renminbi. That has grown exponentially over the last 2 years, and we're probably closer, by the end of this year, we may even reach 1 trillion renminbi. And again, that's driven by two factors. It's a retail investor base who are working offshore, primarily in Hong Kong, who are depositing their renminbi salaries, the funds that they receive from doing goods and selling goods and services, and also corporates selling the renminbi that they receive for trade settlement. So it's primarily been a retail market, initially invested in CDs, but now we're seeing more real money investors such as asset managers and insurance companies setting up investment funds denominated in renminbi. And that's really got for two reasons. One is they expect the currency to appreciate. And as the market matures, the yields for the offshore market will trend upwards and will equate to the yields on the onshore market. So therefore, there's a potential yield benefit over time. But also, we're seeing investors outside Asia who are building up funds for investment on offshore markets. So if we take, for example, Volkswagen, who issued in May 2011, nearly 40% of their investor base who purchased that RMB bond was actually domiciled outside Asia.
Okay, now, I mean, obviously, you can see how it makes sense to issue in renminbi if you're doing China business. Does it make any sense if you just want to raise funds, but you're not actually involved directly in China business?
Well, that's a very, very interesting point. I think one of the examples of a very, very mature capital market allows issuers to issue in foreign currency and use the derivative market to swap that back into their functional currency. And obviously, if you access those markets, access new investors, there's a potential pricing benefit of using the derivative market to swap back into your functional currency. We are now seeing corporate issuers. We've had 24 multinationals who aren't domiciled in Asia issue in the last 2 years. And a number of those are looking to potentially use the offshore derivative market, both the interest rate and the currency market, to convert the proceeds back into their home or functional currency, such as dollars or euros. Now, obviously, depending on the liquidity and the tenor, the pricing may not be appealing, but as that market develops and becomes more mature, it will start to act like other offshore markets, such as the Yankee market, which is the largest dollar market for non-dollar denominated issuers in the world.
Okay, so you mentioned, the development of an interest rate swap market. I mean, where is that working at the moment, and where has it still got to develop? I mean, talking in terms of years and yields and so forth.
Well, there are really two markets. There's the onshore market, the CNY market, and the offshore market, the CNH market. And really, the onshore market is restricted by the fact that onshore borrowing is controlled by the central bank, the PBOC, who set the rates. And there really isn't a benchmark rate for floating rate interests. For the offshore market, as we've seen the development of retail deposit base, the development of new issuance by multinationals, that offshore market has started developing alongside those capital markets. And it provides liquidity out to 5 years now. And again, as that market develops, we'll see benchmark issuance in the longer term, for example, by multinationals in, say, the 10-year point, and the derivatives market will match that in terms of liquidity.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end of 2012. It's been obviously a successful year for renminbi issuance. Do you think 2013 will be as successful or even more successful?
Well, interestingly enough, I think we'll definitely continue to see the exponential growth. And one of the points I mentioned earlier is that normalization, equalization between the offshore and the onshore markets. So as yields increase in the offshore market to match those onshore, then issuers will start to look at the use of issuance in offshore renminbi in a different light, because as the derivative market develops, they may look to use derivatives to create financing. And the remittance of renminbi into China for the capital account, it doesn't matter whether it's come from bond issuance or from the proceeds of a derivative. It's all the corporates or multinationals have to do is to show to the authorities such as the PBOC and the SAFE where those funds are going to be invested. And most offshore issuance is classified as foreign debt, and as long as you can show from an investment purpose the use of those funds, working capital, general corporate purposes, then really what part of the capital markets that is utilised from is irrelevant, and therefore we'll see many multiples of different markets developing offshore.
Thank you, Russell. Well, as you can hear, I mean, the regulations are there, but they do seem to be getting more user-friendly. So we've been talking about the development of the renminbi market this morning. We've been talking about its use as a trade currency, investment, and finally, issuance. I've been talking with executives from HSBC, and in the December issue of the Banker magazine, there'll be further information about the opportunities for investment and use of the renminbi as a trade currency.